Hello everyone, Jack Delahy here, founder of collegeconsulting.us, and in today's lesson, I actually want to go about campus visits, college tours, and how to best go about them. As I'm recording this, it's mid-March here, and so campus visits are in full swing, whether it's actually a high school or spring break, or you just decide, you know what, springtime rolls around over the course of a weekend, I want to go visit a couple of schools. Often this time of year, really March through the summer into early fall is when I see a lot of high school juniors visiting campuses, but honestly a lot of sophomores and freshmen too. So I figured it was worthy to make a list of how best to go about those campus visits, because believe me, I've seen a lot of families who tackle the campus visit methodology all wrong and actually end up saying, why did we even do that? That was such a waste of time, or the child just feels overwhelmed throughout the process. So I'm going to give 8 tips today, 8 tips on campus visits. Even if you just take a handful of these to heart before you initiate your campus visits, I think it's going to help you a lot. And if you've already done a handful, maybe you can line up a couple of these tips that you already did on your own. But even if not, take some of these tips back and apply them to your upcoming visits in the future. So without further ado, let's get into it. The first tip that I have, don't forget nearby schools. I've talked about this in some of my other videos, but I think it's important to understand that wherever you are in the United States, there are a handful of colleges or universities that are guaranteed within a 3 or max a 4-hour drive. And certainly if you're anywhere on the East Coast where a lot of universities are, there are a handful of amazing colleges or universities within an hour or 2. The reason I bring this up is because a lot of students and parents get hung up on what schools should we visit. And I understand, right? There are many and on a student school list, and so a lot of students say, well, I should probably target schools that I would at least consider attending. And while I understand that methodology, I think it's important to understand there's also a different way that you can go about it, which is you don't necessarily have to visit schools that you think will end up on your final list. In fact, sometimes it's really important to just understand the different vibes of a school that you're interested in. I go through my 6 characteristics that I've listed in past videos, but I'll briefly go over again here. You've got big school or small school. You've got city school or country school. And you've got campus school or no campus school. Mix and match those and you visit a handful of schools nearby, even if they're never going to make your final list, and all of a sudden your child is starting to develop an understanding of what types of schools they're interested in. That way, if they do find a school that they're interested in, but it happens to be across the country, they can extrapolate some of the things they learned about their visits at a school nearby that was drivable, that was super easy to go to, and say, based on that, I think I might like or not like that school across the country. So don't forget the nearby option. Now that doesn't mean that goodbye airplanes and you can't get on an airplane and go visit a very specific school that you're interested in. It doesn't mean that, but it doesn't mean that you have to do it that way either, right? There's a lot of options based on your family, your financial situation, the time that you have to invest. A lot of times hopping on an airplane, getting in a hotel and spending many, many days is just something that a family can't invest. I even know that can happen from like a school sports perspective. I wasn't able to do that when I was in high school because I always had sports over spring break. And so I wasn't able to hop on a plane and take 5 days to go visit a bunch of schools with my parents. So really the options were kind of that Saturday morning trip to a nearby school. So number 1, don't forget nearby schools. Tip number 2, book ahead of time. Now, pre-COVID era, this was much less of a tip. Now this is very important. Book ahead of time. Once you have decided, you and your high schooler have decided, yes, we're going to go on a tour on this Saturday. It's going to be 2 hours away. We're going to go see it. Please don't just say, okay, we're good. Pre-COVID times, you could just show up and typically hop into a tour, or they'd say, oh yeah, we booked all of our seats, but come on in. Post-COVID times, most universities are a lot more strict about this. So go online ahead of time. The moment you confirm this is what you're going to do, and go and book not just a tour, but an information session. You will learn drastically different things in the tour versus the information session. Typically, they just come together. Most universities, it's just one. You just book information session followed by tour, and it's somewhere between like 1 and 3 hours total. Book online so you're not that family that drives 3 hours in the car, shows up, and there's no spots for you. Post-COVID times, they will turn you away often if there's not enough seats. So, and then it's up to you to kind of do a self-guided tour, and it's honestly just a lot less valuable. You can book your session for any college or university online, and what you're looking for is the info session or the tour. And the tour. Parents of high schoolers, real quick, and then I'll get you right back to this video. If you are finding value from the video, I have one request, because I'm never going to run ads on these videos, I promise. And so my one way to really share these videos to the masses is to ask you for a favor. Do you mind sharing this with any other high school parents that you know might need help? You can do that by directly sharing, like via, just texting the link to the video, or you can also share on your socials like Instagram or Facebook. It would mean a lot to me. And lastly, if you're really, really getting value and you want to make sure that you're subscribed, you can click the like button, the subscribe button. It'll help the algorithms let you know when my next video is released. Now, back to more value. Number 3. Yes. Write to admissions rep ahead of time. What does this mean? Every college or university has a very similar structure to their admissions department, their undergraduate admissions department. They have many admissions reps inside the undergraduate admissions department assigned to specific locations in the country. So as an example, I was from the suburbs right outside of Boston. And so when I would go and visit schools, there was a specific admissions rep typically in charge of the state of Massachusetts. That is the admissions rep who is my admissions rep. That is the admissions rep whom it's worth getting to know. That's the admissions rep that I am teaching you to have your high schooler shoot a quick note ahead of time, the moment after you book that information session and tour, to just say, hey, Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so, I see you're my specific admissions rep. If you're wondering how you can find this, you can always go to the undergraduate websites at almost every college or university. They typically have a Meet Us page or a Meet the Counselor page, or they'll say who is assigned to you page. Then you can go and scroll through and see who is assigned to your specific state or city or location. And the way that they break it up varies school to school. But anyway, it's very easy to find who your specific admissions rep is, and then you can go and reach out to them and say, hey, just wanted to say hi. My name is so-and-so from this high school. I'm really excited to visit. If you're on campus, I'd love to say hi. That is all you have to say. This isn't a super big deal. This doesn't have to be like some perfectly proofread thing. The goal here is to just get your name out there ahead of time. This will accomplish 2 things. One, when you actually show up to undergraduate admissions, it's kind of an overwhelming scene. There are like many other students, parents, it's pretty chaotic. They're getting the PowerPoint ready. You walk in and you're kind of nervous. How nice would it be to have someone there who has a name tag and you're like, oh, that's who I wrote to. Let me go say hi. And you say, hey, I wrote you an email the other day. And they'll say, oh, yes, I got that email, right? Welcome. All of a sudden, you just feel so much more at ease as a high schooler. The second reason is eventually down the line, if you do end up applying to this college that you're visiting, it can't hurt to have started out with a mature, proactive reach out like that. Just start your relationship. Get that vibe going with your admissions rep. At some schools in 2023, demonstrated interest is still a factor in admissions. So if it's one of those schools, you can see why this would be important. It's becoming more and more common for schools to not account for demonstrated interest, at least formally. But I still stand by the fact that they are human. These admissions reps are human. And so having a 16 or 17-year-old have the maturity and poise to write a 3-sentence email ahead of time, first look up the fact that they're assigned to them and then actually write them an email. Talk about separating yourself. So there really are zero negatives to doing this. What, worst case, a student spends 5 minutes looking up their admissions rep, saying hi, and they get no response. Okay, you're right where you started. So whenever I have students who go on tours, this is always one of my top recommendations to them. Take the time to reach out. All right, number 4. Tour mindset. General, specific. What do I mean by specific? What do I mean by that? When you're on the tour, right? The entire tour is going to be around this. Our school, our school, our school. Here is why our school is the best. Also, I know this. I was a tour guide at Vanderbilt. We are taught to talk about Vanderbilt, how amazing Vanderbilt is, right? And guess what? You're on Vanderbilt's campus, or anyone's campus, so it makes sense. But I recommend for minimum of 5 minutes at some point on the tour, you, as the parent of a high schooler, your child as a high schooler, say, for the next 5 minutes, we are not going to think of this as a Vanderbilt tour guide. We are going to think about, or a Vanderbilt tour, we're going to think about this as a tour of a 7,000 person school right outside a major city, Nashville, with Division I sports and yada, 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 whatever else you want to say about Vanderbilt. Okay? You see the difference in mindset? It is important that you're seeing Vanderbilt for Vanderbilt's sake. Okay? But what I think is equally as important, and this goes back to my tip number 1, right? How understanding vibes is important, is you might come away with some general understanding of what these types of schools are like just by visiting Vanderbilt. And guess what? When you do this, this means that you might not have to visit Duke. You might not have to visit UVA. You might not have to visit Tulane. Now, maybe you still will. But these schools are very similar to Vanderbilt in a lot of these characteristics. Now, nothing's going to be identical, okay? But you can see my point. Spend 5 minutes changing your mindset from I'm walking around Vanderbilt's campus to I'm walking around a campus, first of all, not every school has a campus, with 7,000 undergrads. Here's how that feels. Do I like that feeling of 7,000? Is it too small? Is it too big? Just outside a major city, 1 mile from downtown Nashville, how does that feel? Do I want to be more isolated? With Division I sports, you walk by the football stadium, see what that's like. Say, do I really want this Division I sports culture every Saturday in the fall, the tailgate scene? It's a different mindset. And it's an important one to take 5 minutes and truly remove yourself from the specific of Vanderbilt to the general. Now, don't go all in here on the general, because there are aspects, you're on Vanderbilt's campus, use this, right? You probably are only going to take a tour of Vanderbilt once. So definitely spend time in the specific too. Take into account the tour, the information session for Vanderbilt specifically. But I hope you see the importance of the general as well, because let's be honest, in my program, nearly 100% of every student I've worked with over the last 13 years has had a final school list that has several schools on it that they've never visited, right? Because it's very difficult to have visited every school that will make your list. Why is that important? Because you can use visits from other schools and say, eventually come senior fall, this school is making my school list because, right? If Duke ends up making the student school list because they know about all the similarities to Vanderbilt, you might not need to visit Duke. Maybe that's one of those you see if you get into Duke, and then only after the fact, if you get in, you visit. So I hope that makes sense. General, specific, very important mindset shift while you are on campus visiting. Number 5, here we go. Yes. My favorite, text a student. If you are a high school junior, sophomore, freshman, honestly, even if you're a senior and you're like going to an accepted students day, if you have a high school student, a now college student, a student who went to your child's high school, who is now into that college that you are at, that you are currently on the campus, do everything you can to text them. I've heard, oh yeah, well, I don't really have their number. They were on like, the basketball team and I played on the hockey team, and you're probably one contact away from finding that person's number. First of all, when you're on the other side, it's actually an honor. When they say, hey, I don't have, this is a number that you might not have, but this is so-and-so and I'm on your college campus and I hear you're a freshman. I would love to meet up if you've got 10 minutes. I got a handful of those in my time in college, and it's awesome. Like, wow, yeah, they want to learn about my college. Don't be afraid to text a student. The information session and the tour are great. Super high-level overview. I'm going to tell you right now, they are designed to sell you on the school. I was a tour guide. I know this. I think I was like a very honest tour guide, perhaps sometimes too honest. But most of our training was about, here's how to highlight the school. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? We are the first layer towards, having students apply or not. But you want to know who will be way more honest? A student. And that's good for any number of reasons. If they're way more honest because, oh my gosh, here's why I'm loving this school, it's amazing, X, Y, and Z, they're going to give you like personal anecdotes that you can relate to. Or if there are some negatives, they're going to give you some personal anecdotes that the tour guide is not going to. If you are on campus and you know of a friend who is a freshman, sophomore, junior, or senior at that school, make an effort to text a student. You won't regret it. Number 6. I think many of you have heard this one before from me, but it's very important. Eat lunch in the dining hall. What, Jack? That's kind of a weird one. Eat lunch in the dining hall? Why are we talking about lunch? I see it time and time again. Families go and visit schools and they say, we're at this new school, this new city we've never been to, so let's do the info session and tour guide, and then let's run away from campus and go to a super fancy restaurant off campus because, yay, new city. And while that may be very nice of parents to want to do, don't do that, please. Eat lunch in the dining hall. Why? Well, there is no better way to get an understanding of the types of students who are at that school, what they are like, what they're talking about, how the vibes, how students interact with each other, what the hustle and bustle is of the campus, than sitting at a table in the middle of the dining hall from the hours of 11:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. and just watching. Seriously, just watching. And if you do this, you're going to realize very quickly what types of students are there, maybe what types of students aren't there. You're going to learn a lot about the culture of a school just from doing this. You want bonus points? If you do that, let's just say you sit, you watch, you eat with your family, you don't interact with everyone, that's okay. Okay, that's the base level. Bonus points, go and sit down at a table. You can do this with someone who's sitting alone maybe because they even want to, talk with anyone, or sit down with a table full of students. I can't tell you, when I was a college kid, if someone did that, I would be like, let's go. I would love to tell you about this school, right? And spend 5 minutes and just say, tell me, how are you liking insert school, right? And they'll just start talking, and you will learn more in those 5 minutes than perhaps you did on the entire tour. Because again, the theme is transparency, honesty, and it's coming from an actual student. If that's a freshman, that's literally you in 365 days, right? So I think it's really important to eat lunch in the dining hall because that's where you're going to see the students. Second best is like walk around the library, but even then, like the library is just way less fun, right? People are like heads down, headphones in, studying. I don't really know. I think there's no better place to really see the action than the dining hall. Hope that one helps. Number 7. All right, now I'm going to preface this with sometimes you're trying to make the most out of a trip where you had to get on an airplane and rent a car, and so you're packing stuff in. I get that. There are, extenuating circumstances. But if at all possible, complete no more than one per day. No more than one campus visit, information session, tour, eating in the dining hall, all of that in a day. I've done myself when I was a high schooler with my parents, I did too, all the time, like Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, an hour drive in between, whatever it is. You can do it. But again, we're giving my recommendations. I don't recommend that. Reason is many. First of all, like you just do more than one in a day. Very quickly, all of a sudden, things just start to kind of blend together. You're like, did that experience occur at that school or that school? And all of a sudden, you start to just be like, I don't know, they were kind of close to each other. Where did that happen again? The second is it's so much less fun when you just pack them into a day. It becomes a slog. It becomes tiring. And unfortunately, I'm just going to tell you the following. If you do 2 in a day, whatever one is number 2 is getting a bad draw. Because by the time you're on the second half of the second tour, you're exhausted. Parents are exhausted. Students are exhausted. And you're not going to look at that school with the same kind of neutral perspective that you probably did your morning school, right? So if possible, try to do 1 in a day. A bonus to this is, let's say you're doing 1 in a day, then you actually have time after to recap. Crazy notion, but recapping your visits is really important. If eventually, throughout your, let's say from sophomore year of high school all the way to senior year of high school, let's say you do a dozen campus tours, that's a lot, and they're going to happen over a long period of time. You need a place where you can recap, ideally with your, with your whole family, talk about what you like, talk about what you didn't like, and then actually take notes. Like in my program, we have an entire college tracker to keep track of this. There's a tab that says campus visits. There's a section with mom notes, dad notes, student notes, so that you can recap. But obviously, for those who aren't in my program, it's pretty easy. You can create a Google Sheet. You can call it campus recaps. You can create a Google Doc, campus recaps. But the point is to be able to recap. And let me tell you, when you go from number 1, and then you drive right to number 2, and then you drive right to dinner, there's no time to recap. And by the time, even if you're like, let's recap, everyone's exhausted. So no more than 1 in a day, highly recommend. And then the last one does kind of align with this, but I actually think the mindset is important here. Number 8, actually enjoy it. Actually enjoy it. Actually enjoy it. I see so many families that treat campus visits like it's a death march. They treat campus visits like, oh, we have to do this. In essence, think about what you as a high schooler are doing. You're shopping around for where you might possibly spend the next 4 years of your life. It's pretty cool. And you've got a lot of colleges going like this saying, here's the red carpet. We want your parents' tuition money. And you're seeing, hey, do I like this? Do I not like this? Right? Like when you phrase it that way, pretty cool. So actually enjoy these. And if you ever get to a point where you're like, I'm not enjoying this, kind of take a step back and reassess, because you're able to typically do these tours as a family. Pretty cool, unique experience. You've got all these colleges and universities really rolling out the red carpet for you. I think it's important that you just actually enjoy it. And so if you aren't enjoying your campus visits, or maybe haven't up to now, maybe part of the reason is you didn't do some of the first 7 that I listed. So I encourage you, and maybe if you just haven't considered this, all it takes is a slight mindset shift. Looking for colleges and trying to figure out what colleges might be a fit is a really good problem to have, like an elite level problem to have. And so I think when you just even go in with that mindset and say, yeah, for the next 4 hours, I'm going to enjoy this. It's amazing how quickly your brain can kind of open up and process things more. And plus, campus visits are more fun when you are just willing to have fun on it versus when you're like, here we go again. So highly recommend you actually enjoy it. All right, so those are the 8. To briefly recap, here we go. The 8 from my notebook I have here. 1, don't be afraid to visit schools that are nearby. People always just go, how can I hop on an airplane and fly as far as possible? Nearby can be great too. 2, book them ahead of time. Tour information session. As soon as you know, honestly, they're free, right? So as soon as you even are like, yeah, I'm probably going to visit them, just book it. Get it in. 3, write to your admissions rep prior to visiting. Went through all the reasons why that's helpful. 4, on your visit, think about specific. What exact school am I visiting? And then take 5 minutes minimum to think about the generalities of what you're seeing. Size of school, type of school, campus environment, so you can extrapolate eventually to schools that you're unable to visit. 5, if you know a student on campus, text them. If you don't have their number, text the friend who has their number. Spend a little bit more effort to try to get that contact. There's nothing better than getting a one-on-one personal tour, even if it's for only 10 minutes from an actual student who's there. 6, eat lunch in the dining hall. We went over why. Eat lunch in the dining hall. 7, try to do no more than 1 a day, so it's not a slog. And 8, have fun and enjoy it. So I hope you appreciated this video. If you did, click the like button, click the subscribe button. Also, write in the comments what future videos you want to see. I'm actually going to read them personally and will help identify future videos that I'm going to make on this channel. Thanks so much for joining, and until next time, have a good one.